What is going on, movie meals? Movie meals. Welcome to the Cantina, baby. It's time to talk Star Wars. I got with me my younger brother, been on a couple videos. Nick, thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
We're here to talk everything Star Wars, guys. We're going to be relaxed. Well, not everything Star Wars, but we're going to talk some of the controversial points we've heard. My brother's just as big of a Star Wars fan as I am, reading some of the novels and canon, knows a lot of the EU and the legends, and we've been hearing a lot of the negative and positive reviews. Some people hate this movie, some people love this movie, but we're just going to talk our thoughts on a few of the other issues. I went through a little bit in my spoiler review, but I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth on a few points, and we're just going to be relaxed here, guys, and just talk about it. So Nick's going to be here with me. Kyle's not here. He didn't want to be a part of this one. Not as big of a Star Wars fan, but we're going to talk about it. So we're going to start. Let's talk The Force Awakens versus The Last Jedi, because that has become a big crazy point I've heard with friends, critics, normal reviewers. I've heard so many people, it's just constantly being compared to JJ's film. So Nick, let's start with you. Which one do you like better?
Well, I like The Last Jedi a lot more, actually. And my biggest problem with The Force Awakens, I think, was its use of nostalgia. And the
What? No! That's the one. How do you hate nostalgia?
Well, I think nostalgia can be used in really good ways, and it was, I think, in The Last Jedi. And for example, when you watch The Force Awakens and you watch the scene where they first see the Millennium Falcon, Rey and Finn see the Millennium Falcon, and when we see it, we're thinking, oh my god, it's a Millennium Falcon, like, that's where everything's happened in our favorite movies. And Rey and Finn are thinking, I'm about to die, I need to get in this spaceship. So it kind of separates us from the action of the movie by giving us a different feeling than the characters that we're supposed to be focusing on. But in The Last Jedi,
I don't get that in The Force Awakens. I love that nostalgia.
And I think it takes away from the movie's plot because there's so many little moments where we see something that we know, but the characters don't know. So it separates us from the characters. But in The Last Jedi, there's, for example, the scene where Luke looks, where R2-D2 shows Luke the message from A New Hope. We see that and we feel the nostalgia for it, but at the same time, so is Luke.
Yeah.
So we feel the same thing, and it keeps us in the story and keeps us in this world instead of
love that scene, man.
Pointing things out. That scene's great.
Side tangent here, I talked about this in the spoiler review, but when he sees R2 and Luke's just like, R2, it literally feels like I'm watching the old movies. The way he talks, the way he acts, and then he's like, hey, watch the language. Like, it's just like going back to A New Hope when they first met. I just, tangent, love it.
Similar thing with Yoda. It feels like Empire Strikes Back when they're talking.
And the puppet doesn't pull you out. The puppet, to me, doesn't pull you out. That's nostalgia done in the right way to me.
Yeah. Well,
I can understand the nostalgia thing, but it didn't hit for me in The Force Awakens, like, negatively, because I was so pumped. It was like, for me, Falcon, and it doesn't take away from the characters because that's Star Wars.
Where it hits for me is in rewatches. When I rewatch it, I'm like, well, you know, the first time you see it, there's just so much adrenaline from seeing
that, and the
Star
whole
Wars
theater's
movie.
freaking out, and screaming and yelling in happiness. But I don't know, it's gotten very unfair comparisons, and I love both the movies. I mean, I gave Force Awakens a 10 out of 10, mainly because the experience of going that first time was just crazy. So insane, 10 out of 10. And then the spoiler review, I gave The Last Jedi a 9. Now, guys, I want to point out here, I've seen the movie now twice. I finally got a chance to see it a second time. My brother here's seen it 4 times. I'm jealous. I haven't gotten a chance to go that many. But I just saw it my second time, finally, after Christmas, and it gave a lot more perspective, because hearing all these points people complain about, it made me more aware, and I wanted to pay attention to those scenes in order to get my own take on it. And we'll keep talking about The Force Awakens versus The Last Jedi, but I think we should move to the humor in the movie, which is a big negative. Negative or positive, I've heard either way.
Yeah.
I mean, we can even start at the beginning, right when Luke, I mean, even before that, with Poe talking and being quippy, and then vice versa with Luke throwing the lightsaber. But what do you think?
Well, my initial reactions when I first came to the movie, I was like, well, this is just becoming Marvel movies. This is, the one-liners and the
But there
humor.
were one-liners in The Force Awakens, too.
There was, and I actually think The Force Awakens is worse with the humor, because the humor in The Last Jedi, I think it dies after the first half of the movie, first quarter of the movie. It goes away and it just becomes very dark, and there's not that many jokes. And I really actually liked the Poe joke because it was kind of set up in the first movie and it served a plot point.
In the first movie, he's quipping jokes. He's a tough guy.
So
he's like, who talks first? You talk first, I talk first, I can't understand
There is one specific joke that I didn't like, and it's when I actually did not like the joke when Rey says to Luke, I know your daily routine. You're not busy. Because I think
he's pretty busy. He's milking those.
Because
creatures.
every time the 4 times I've seen the movie, someone always laughs, and I feel like no one gets the next line where Luke's like, the Jedi need to end. It kind of glosses over that. So I think there might have, the humor doesn't feel as smart as it did in the original trilogy, because the original trilogy has humor in it.
They all have humor in it. I mean, the movies are,
but it definitely feels very Disney humor to me.
I don't feel the Disney feel personally. I think it's the characters. I think in the first one there's a lot of quips and they're funny. I laughed a lot more in The Force Awakens than I did in this one. But it feels like, to me, an analogy to use is when somebody says something to you and it's really, really funny and you have a huge laugh, but then as you keep laughing, all of a sudden you kind of have that moment where you just stop laughing loudly and you're just like, you're still laughing, but it's silent, and then you kind of come down and you crash because it was so funny. That's what the two movies are. The Force Awakens, hit you hard with the humor, and then you're coming down and going more to earth in The Last Jedi a little bit. And some of the jokes for me in The Last Jedi didn't work, and I'm okay with that, because that's life. It's not a comedy. It's not supposed to be a specific story about humor that every joke's supposed to be making you laugh.
Yeah.
And so if a few jokes don't work, that's fine, because sometimes my friends make jokes and I think they're funny people, but I don't laugh because it just wasn't that funny that time. At first, and we'll go into Luke throwing the lightsaber now, at first when he did it, I hated it. First time I saw it, I was like, why is he just throwing the saber away? I wanted a big moment. Then I realized the second time viewing it, I just didn't get what I wanted. I was expecting him to be like, oh my gosh, after 2 years of him being like, oh, this is my father's saber. Obi-Wan gave this to me. But no, he was a different man. This is years later. He hasn't seen this lightsaber since Empire Strikes Back. He lost it, and I think, for me, it got better the second time. I maybe had a little chuckle this time, and if it wasn't in the movie, I wouldn't complain, but I did enjoy it more.
Yeah, I didn't mind that moment at all, because it seemed like they were just saying, your theories are all in this lightsaber, and there they go out the window. Let us tell our story. So it kind of maybe
ballsy. It's ballsy.
It was, I don't know what would he have said. I have no idea, and I'm happy that he did throw it, because I really like what they did with Luke, and I think that was really interesting. So should we talk about Luke's character, because that's been a big...
That's another big thing people complain about. So let's transition into it. Yeah, people have really complained. I've heard a lot of complaints online about Luke's arc. And I mean, people even point out that Mark Hamill
fundamentally disagreed with it.
Now that, just reading the news and paying attention, Mark Hamill has come back out, and he even I follow him on Twitter, and I think today actually, he said on Twitter, I shouldn't have never made these concerns public, because this isn't exactly what I meant. And I get what he's saying, because to me, and he talks where he's like, my moment, the Luke Skywalker moment, was in The Force Awakens, when the lightsaber flies. It's not going to Rey, it goes to me.
Yeah.
And I fight. And when you think of Luke Skywalker from 4 through 6, that is that Luke Skywalker. But now we got a different man. You age, you grow, you change in life, and that happened to Luke. And when Rian Johnson took his take on it, he was like, no, Luke wouldn't do that anymore. He's an old man. He's in a lot of pain from the fact that, everyone died.
He was Luke, when you think about it, was a big reason that the First Order became a thing, was because of what happened with Kylo Ren. Not only did he lose lots of Jedi, and he lost a Kylo Ren, Ben Solo to the dark side, but then out of that, the First Order rose. So,
out of the ashes of the Empire.
And so I think it really worked, and I think it added a lot more nuance to the story. Like, I mean, it would be really cool to see old Luke come out and just be older and way stronger and just take out people. But
I think fans had a hard time with it too because there were all the pictures and social media stuff of Mark Hamill working out and getting pretty ripped.
Yeah.
And he did need that for the younger Luke in the movie when Kylo was younger, but those were all fan expectations. Everyone was like, I can't wait for the big Luke battle with his green saber versus Kylo, and it's like, and I would have freaked out if that happened, but I understand that as a storyteller, you say that's not who this guy is, and he would lose against Kylo. At his age, Obi-Wan couldn't beat Vader. Yoda couldn't in Empire just march in and take down Vader. He maybe could have back in Revenge of the Sith Yoda days or something, but he was older. He can't do that. It becomes more knowledge is power, becoming one with the Force is power. And Luke's more powerful now that he's died and is one with the Force than ever.
And true Jedis, especially Yoda, they don't like to fight with a lightsaber. They like to use the Force, and I think the last battle just shows that.
Well, it's not even the use of the Force. It's that the Jedi are passive.
Yeah.
They don't want to fight unless have to. It's a martial arts style thing. It's I'm not going to fight unless I'm provoked or I need to protect the innocent. And the Sith are different. The Sith want power. They want greed. They're lustful, greedy people, and that's why there has to be a rule of two, because they all just murder each other.
And that's why when Kylo Ren kills Snoke, it's so powerful.
And let's transition into that because everybody is ragging on the Snoke thing. Now, seeing it, I'm going to start this off. So seeing it a second time, I've heard this theory a little bit, and I had this theory pretty fast, and I've adapted my thoughts more since I last talked to you. But I believe Snoke is talking about himself completely. And now I don't know if Snoke, after thinking about it more, I don't know if Snoke is still alive, but I think Snoke pulled an Obi-Wan. And Snoke is in a decaying body, a ruined body, and I think he is 100% talking about himself when he says, turning the lightsaber, I see it, you're going to strike down your true enemy. And if you remember, though, Return of the Jedi, that happens. The Emperor says, strike me down in your anger. And Luke tries, and Vader stops him. And had Luke actually gone through with it, Luke might have turned. And I think his point was, you kill me, and maybe he does come back physically. Maybe his spirit and consciousness are manifested. So. That happens in some of the legends, but I don't think so either. And if he does come back, I'm not going to say I'll hate it until I see how it's done.
Yeah, I hope not.
If he becomes a Force ghost, one with the Force,
he talks to
you
Kylo
become more powerful than ever. Obi-Wan, Yoda, Qui-Gon, all these characters we've seen have gotten more powerful. I think Luke is now more powerful than ever, becoming one with the Force. And I think the Emperor knew it in Episode 6 when he says, you strike me down. But now Kylo did it out of anger. He was angry at Snoke because he wanted to be Vader so badly, and Snoke was treating him like a child and hitting him hard and showing his power and not taking anything. And when he killed him, it wasn't as an act, I don't think an act of heroism as a Jedi. It was an act of vengeance and anger when he killed him.
Well, all Sith, it's about, killing your master is a big deal.
The rule of two, you have one with power and an apprentice to crave that.
And it also is kind of, a shout out to Darth Sidious when he killed Plagueis. You
have to kill your master.
You kill your master.
But Plagueis, I believe, a lot of this stuff isn't canon anymore, but Plagueis, I would say, and Sidious, no, you die, you become more, if you're that strong in life, in death, you become even stronger. Qui-Gon was a great Jedi, and in the Clone Wars show, they go into how powerful he really did become after he died. Yoda has become one with nature and can just summon lightning from the Force and just burn trees. Yeah. Like, Obi-Wan, more powerful, can give wisdom, and I think we'll see Luke in the next movie because of it. That's getting off topic, but back to Snoke. I love that he killed him. I thought it the first time I saw it. I think it even more the second time now, really paying attention to the dialogue. I think Snoke was talking about himself. I think it mirrors Return of the Jedi, and I think it set it up for JJ, that said that weird, JJ in 9, because now it's not, I don't think everybody's going to be like, oh, it's going to be a mirror of episode 6. I think this had a lot of elements of episode 5 and 6, and now JJ can wrap it up with a perfect, I don't know if a happy ending, but he can wrap this up well, and I trust him for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked them killing Snoke. It was not what I expected, and I think that scene is one of the best scenes in any Star Wars movie ever. And when you watch it the second... And
that room is
we watch
crazy
it, a few times, and you go in and you know that Kylo Ren he's sitting there in the background while Snoke is kind of like torturing Rey, and he's just, you know that he's gonna kill Snoke, and you know that's what he's thinking, and it adds just like a whole nother layer to the scene, and it makes it
is such a conflicted character.
He's so good.
In The Force Awakens, I remember the biggest complaint with him was, it's emo Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren's so whiny. Kylo Ren is a kid who wants to be something, and everyone's telling him he can't do it. He wants to be Darth Vader. He wants to be bad. He's seduced by the light. We've never seen that in Star Wars. In the movies, we've never seen a character seduced by the light, only the dark. And he has this inner turmoil, and he wants to be Darth Vader, and he's told, kill your dad, you be Vader. And then he kills his dad, and Snoke's like, you're not Vader. You're nothing like Vader. You're weak, and you're good. And it's also,
it's interesting that all of his kind of father figures are dead after this movie. Or all his masters, because Han died in the first one.
Yeah.
Now...
And it gets to him when Luke says it, when he's like, I will always be with you just like your dad.
Yeah.
And that's when he charges at
him.
And
so, but then he kills Snoke, and then when Luke dies, now there's no one holding him back, and really his past, as he says in the movie, it's gone now, and I think I'm excited to see him go fully dark, and I hope that's the route they take.
He's going to be the main bad in this movie.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of Game of Thrones, where it's like this, you're set up to think this is either your hero or your villain. This is your main villain. And that's what we got with Kylo. And then you think the main villain's Snoke. And then they have this little side character, and then all of us like Ramsay or one of those characters. And all of a sudden someone dies, and then they're just like, where did this guy come from? Yeah. And that's actually a complaint that bothered me. I had so many people be like, who are huge fans of Game of Thrones and other shows, and in this show, they're like, they built up this character and then just kill him out of nowhere. And they do that in Game of Thrones all the time, and it's not a complaint. But in Star Wars, it's a complaint.
Yeah.
And it weirds me out.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are just mad because they don't
know who he is.
They don't know who he is. And I
think we get it in the next movie.
I think we get it in the next movie, and I don't care if we get it in the next movie. Like, I'd be happy to learn who he is, but I don't think it's integral to the story. I don't think it is either. I think it's just the idea there's a badass.
Remember this? When the original trilogy came out, nobody knew who the Emperor was. All of a sudden, this dude shows up, and he's like, hey, Vader, good work. And Vader's like, thank you, Emperor. And you hear about this figure who's so powerful. And then we got a trilogy about him.
Yeah.
Rian Johnson's trilogy could be Snoke's prequel. We don't know.
Yeah.
I want to transition to this, though. Go back to Luke for a second. Let's talk about that end scene. Because I've heard complaints, man, about the Force. And him using the Force, and the Force and you said you've been hearing from people that the Force has been used in ways we've never, that you told me people are changing the rules of the Force.
Yeah, which I completely disagree with, and I think if we want the Disney to be successful in making Star Wars, that we can't get upset when they try to do something different with the Force, because when you go back to the original trilogy, when the first time it came out, in Return of the Jedi, they just throw Force lightning at you, and everyone's just like, oh yeah, the Force can do that. Like, that's a thing that happens. People aren't like, oh, it's not in canon, like, this isn't a thing that you can do.
Well, in the original trilogy, there was no canon at that time. Yeah. It was just those 3 movies.
Yeah, but I think, like, since the EU has been erased, you have to let new creators...
And that has angered a lot of people.
New creators be able to create new things in the Force and allow us to expand the universe. And I really like what they did. They didn't take the Force in a midichlorians way. They took it in a spiritual way, and I think there's a lot of
midichlorians is canon. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
But they just say, okay, we know a lot of people hate it. Let's not use that word.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been the spirit and this religion. I mean, the EU, there's so many people who love the EU in a lot of books. And I've read some of the EU books. We've read a couple good ones, and we have a couple Obi-Wan ones, and I love that character. And a lot of them aren't good. There's some really great EU, and if you guys love them, love them, but there's a lot of them that aren't great, and a lot of them go into different powers of the Force. And the best thing Disney did was eliminate canon and say, okay, all of this isn't canon except the movies, the 2 shows, the Clone Wars movie, and that's it. And then everything after will be canon. Yeah. And that is a big deal because now they can cherry pick the good things from the EU because a lot of it wasn't
good, exactly.
And they can cherry pick the best things. And there are stories in canon where Luke does very similar things. And I think they address the point everyone's making in the movie when he goes, "What is the Force?" And Rey's like, "Well, you can make people do things and you can lift rocks." And that's what I think most fans have the idea of the Force. The Force is just, they lift things up and they can choke people and push things.
Superpower.
The Force is literally everything that binds everyone. We're getting sweaty here, but it binds the world. It binds light, dark, and Rey talks about it. It's death, it's life, it's the circle, it's everything. And each person is going to be able to adapt it differently. I mean, Mace Windu adapts it differently. Yoda is really one with nature. That's why the lightning doesn't as affect him in the prequels. That's why he summons lightning. Obi-Wan is a little bit more with a wiser mental take on the Force. And Luke is able, people don't understand. He projected himself and then made dice solid things for a few minutes so Leia could hold it. And there is a shot.
And Kylo Ren could hold it.
Yeah. And people complain, they're like, "Oh, I don't understand. Luke touched Leia." And if you look closely, he's not touching Leia. And Leia realizes he isn't real. And when he places the dice, he made the dice tangible with the Force.
Yeah. Which is something you see earlier in the movie when Rey and Kylo are talking, when Kylo wipes the water off his head. That means that things can happen.
Things can happen like that. But this guy projected himself. And he knew, I gotta become a symbol for the whole world. Everyone's talking about this legend. Why don't I go be the legend everyone's saying?
Yeah.
And it'll spark a new hope, pun intended. It will, though. It sparks something new. And Poe says it, and I can't remember. Admiral Holdo says it, I think. It might be mispronouncing that. But they both say it, we are the spark that'll light the fire.
Yeah, they say
and Leia's like, the fire's going out, the spark is over, and Luke walks in. And the way that whole thing's shot, and people do not understand how the Force works, man, in some of these movies. I mean, there are complaints like, "Oh, Kylo's stopping blaster bolts, and Kylo's doing this in The Force Awakens," and then all of a sudden he teams up with Rey to fight all the guards. You don't just... it takes concentration and training to just suddenly do that. You all can't be Vader in Rogue One marching through, just murdering a bunch of people and choking them out. You have to be insanely strong, and Kylo isn't there yet. Luke is one of the most powerful Jedis in history. To be able to project himself, physically create something, and do that for a long time, it killed him. It took so much power. Everyone can... The Force is everything, which means its limits are to your imagination.
Boundless,
there's anything you can do with it, but you have to have the training, the concentration. I mean, the Sith are so greedy, they went and said, "Well, with the Force, we can't die. We can just stay alive." Plagueis was like, "I'm so powerful, I'm gonna stay alive." And in EU, there's things where the Force can transfer consciousness into one body to another. Yeah. The Force is endless, and this complaint that, I wanted Luke to show up physically and have this big battle. He knew he would have lost that battle. He knew he would have lost it.
And it wouldn't have mattered, even if he did kill Kylo Ren.
And he knows, strike me down, I will, just like Snoke, and just like Obi-Wan and Yoda.
It's almost more powerful for Kylo to strike him down, and then he made the act of striking him down, but then when Luke doesn't die, he has to just deal with, I was gonna kill Luke, and Luke, knew it.
He one-upped him, too. Yeah, he's like, "Oh, you're not even here." And that makes him more angry. You didn't even come to face me. And can we just... Side tangent, that last shot of him looking at the 2 suns.
Yeah, and it's crazy because
tears.
And it's also funny because he's imagining the 2 suns. Because there's a shot with one sun, because the planet only has one, and then he imagines the 2 suns goes back to A New Hope, and then is a perfect end to the story and a perfect end to the themes of the movie with the 2 paths you can choose.
And then when it transitions,
it's one sun
away,
again.
It's just the one sun.
So it's him thinking, which is
I'm
amazing.
getting chills literally just talking about it. I cannot wait for this movie to come out in DVD. We just take 2 days and we just back to back all of them.
Yeah.
So what else we got here? Let's talk a few more of these points.
Let's talk about Rey's parents.
That's a great transition because we're just talking about Luke, and everybody thought it was going to be Luke.
Yeah.
I remember when we were sitting in line, him and I sat in line all day to see the movie, get the good seats, and I asked a bunch of people in line, I said this in the spoiler review, hey, who do you think Rey's parents are? And it was actually mostly Obi-Wan Kenobi's granddaughter.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people said Luke.
I thought Leia and Han.
Leia and Han is another big one. And I remember I wanted nothing more than her to be a Kenobi. Obi-Wan's my favorite character. Yeah. I love him. I love everything he represents in the Jedi. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I thinking about it, I was like, I think they're going to be no one. And it has now come out that Rian Johnson wrote this while they were filming Episode 7, and he had conversations with J.J. Abrams and Lucasfilm, but he was told, just do your thing while they're filming, and then he had story points. He knew that he had read the script, but he chose to go with no one, and
before the
theories
got
many people.
Yeah.
Because the second it ends, they're like, oh, you want something, all through The Force Awakens, you want something more and you can't have it, but Leia, all of them, Han is like, there's nothing left for you on Jakku, and he knows and people are like, oh, he knows who his parents are. I think after seeing The Last Jedi and rewatching Force Awakens, when he says, like, you want a job, like, there's nothing left for you on Jakku, it's not that he knows who her parents are. He knows there's truly nothing left for her. He can tell that. I don't even think he knew who her parents were. He just knew
and he
that
knew
she
because,
needed a home.
Because it's very interesting, because when we watch The Force Awakens and Finn is going to talk to the Outer Rim guys, and Rey leaves, and then Maz Kanata says, who's the girl? And they transition. Everyone's like, well, Han knows who it is, and she's telling her. But then there's the next scene where Maz Kanata says to her after her visions of lightsaber that she's like, there's nothing left for you on Jakku. It's because Han was like, never heard of her. I don't think she's anybody. She's just some girl on Jakku. It fits perfectly.
I think, though, it reminds him of Luke. Yeah. All of a sudden, Luke just shows up with his old man I'm blanking Star Wars names. Anyway, Tatooine. Thank you. And he just shows up, and then all of a sudden he's on this crazy adventure, and there's lightsabers, and there's Force, and it's just this kid who's from nowhere who does something amazing. And I think Han recognized that in her. And I think he said that, and she is a Force-sensitive being. Maz Kanata is this old wise person, but there's a cut scene of her using the Force in The Force Awakens. It's in the novelization. So I think she knew there is truly, and I think Han maybe said that, like, I can tell she keeps saying I need to go back. There's nothing for her left. And this girl is a great pilot. She has the Force in her and all this stuff, and I think Maz could sense the Force within her, and I think Maz was like, Maz could sense she longed for something that she wasn't getting, and she wanted it so bad. And we see, Luke talks about it. He's like, you didn't hesitate to go to the dark. She wanted her parents to be something special. She wants something so special to her. And Luke's like, you didn't even hesitate. You ran right to the dark because you wanted it. And to me, her parents being no one, I remember in that line, saying, I want it to be something else. And I bet it isn't. I bet they're no one. And everyone in line called me crazy. They're like, no way Disney would do that. And I think that's why a lot of people are upset. People are like, oh, Disney doesn't listen to your theories. It's not about what you want. It's about what the story demands.
And when you think about it, first off, it fits the themes of the movie
way better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But when you're watching that scene, and imagine if Kylo said, you're the son of Obi-Wan Kenobi. She would have said, huh? Who is Obi-Wan?
Like, just this dude
know
in the mirror scene. It just Ian McGregor's face shows up, and she's like, "Luke,
who's this guy?
Who? Luke." And Luke's just like, "You're a Kenobi."
And it didn't her. Even though she wanted her parents to be somebody, unless Luke would have been like, "Your father was this amazing Jedi," like exactly what happened to Luke. It would have meant something to the audience because we're like, oh my god, it's Luke, and we would have all freaked out. But Rey would have had no idea. So I think it kept us in the movie, and I think it would have taken us out if it was this huge reveal. We would have freaked out, and we would have been like, just wanting to see Rey because she's related to someone else, when I think it's a lot better, actually, that she is no one.
And seeing her face in the mirror just says, it doesn't matter. She is important. It doesn't matter where she's from. And that's important, I think, for the Force again, because the Force has this chosen one, this Jesus-born, Anakin Skywalker born of the Force, and he's caused all this problem on the dark side, and then his son fixes it, and then his nephew screws it up. I think the Force is just, it's saying, all right, we gotta balance this out a little bit. Let's go make a couple people who deserve to have power. And I think Finn even represents that. Yeah. Bred, born in the dark of the Empire or the First Order,
has become to be a hero.
He doesn't want to do it, and he fights against it. And I think, and it's great, I think, that she's no one.
Me too.
I think that her parents being no one, as much as I would have loved Obi-Wan Kenobi to be her grandfather, I would have loved if she was a Skywalker. I think it serves the story so well when she's crying and he's like, your parents are no one. And so many people can't believe Kylo was lying, and they're like, he was lying, he didn't see it. And I think that is a fair point, because Snoke connected them, so Snoke could have manipulated any memories.
But I don't think that's the case.
And I don't think it is either, because I don't know why he would constantly be like, you think you can turn him. Why would you think that? Because she saw in her vision that he turns. And I think what she saw was killing Snoke, and she was like, oh, he's going to turn. But that's not what he did. And he saw her parents. Yeah. And he said, because he's probably thinking what we are. Who is this girl? Like, and there's the scene in The Force Awakens where this girl...
What girl?
Yeah, he's like, what girl? And everyone's like, oh, the way he says that, he knows. And even I thought that at the time. Too. But now, going back and looking at it, I think he just... Knowing that there's this girl who just shows up out of nowhere, I think he's just scared. And we don't know, guys. JJ could have something lined up, and she could be a student of someone, and it was all a lie. But right now, I'm fine with it, and I like it a lot.
I hope he does. I hope they don't change it. I hope they own the decisions that were made.
If he does, though, let's just see the movie first before we decide it's awful. Like, let's wait for episode 9 before we decide it's horrible, because it might flow. Maybe he does do that. She is a Kenobi, but it flows really dang well. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. There's 2 more scenes, though, before we wrap up here I want to talk about. I'm going to throw another scene at you. So let's real quickly go over the Leia Superman scene that everybody's talking about.
Yeah, I was not a fan of...
The first time or now?
Every time.
Oh. I'm just going to drink my water here.
And, well, I like the idea behind it. And it wasn't awful. It wasn't a scene that I'm just... It's laughable. It wasn't like... the Canto Bight stuff that was just really prequel-y, you know, like, and I've always wanted to see Leia use the Force, because she has to be a Force user.
That's a huge thing for her. Well, she is, but we've never seen her use the Force.
I'm glad that they showed that. I was hoping that they would show that, and I just think that they could have done it in a different way, where she didn't have to do a Superman thing. When I first watched it,
says it's preachy.
When I saw it, it actually reminded me a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy.
It did to me. When she's just floating
there, it's like, are we watching a Marvel movie? Especially at the beginning of the movie, there's a lot of humor. It's like, is this gonna be Guardians of the Galaxy, or is this gonna be Star Wars?
It's Star Wars.
And it did go to Star Wars. I'm very thankful for that. But I think the scene is worth it, because when after that scene, I was like, well, that was the perfect ending for her, to have her just floating, and that was a good ending, and I was happy with it. But I'm so glad they didn't kill her, for the scene with her and Luke was so worth that moment where she flew back. It was so worth it that I wasn't mad about it.
One more time that I've heard from so many people, why did they not kill her off? Why did they keep Leia alive? Why did they do this? Carrie Fisher died. And guys, that is just awful. They didn't reshoot any big scenes after she passed away. No. They didn't. They did a couple reshoots, but they didn't be like, let's change the story. Yeah. All of that was shot before she passed away. Yeah. All of it.
The whole idea.
And people...
That would be a disservice to the story.
Carrie Fisher, if she was here and knew she was going to die, and you came up to her and you were like, no, they should reshoot it when you die, she would smack you in the face. Yeah. That was not the type of person Carrie Fisher was. I mean, of course, I don't know her personally, but from what I've seen in interviews and heard from people who loved her, I truly believe she wouldn't have wanted that. The type of person she is. And the scene at first, I felt the Guardians feel first time I saw it. It feels different to me the second time, and it didn't bother me as much, because it is a little Superman-y, but when you think about the Force, how else is she supposed to pull herself towards anything? She's supposed to pull the ship towards her?
I just think...
She has to get there. What did she just do, though? Does she just push and leave her arms floating there and float like a weird ghost with her arms flailing
Yeah, I
around.
just think the whole scene. I don't think the scene was done very poorly. Like, I think it was done. It could have been so much worse. But I just think that just the idea of her pulling herself after she's in space was just not a good idea.
Well, the whole space thing where people are like, once you're in space, you're dead. It's
It's
science
fantasy.
fiction. It's science fiction fantasy.
It's
like,
fantasy.
let's suspend our belief for a dang second here, guys. There was a complaint too with the bombs dropping. Well, bombs can't drop in space. They don't fall. They would just float. And it's fantasy. It's a fantasy movie. Just suspend your disbelief for just 2 seconds, you weird nerd. I'm tired of those people. Sorry. Tangent. Anyway, but let's go back to the Leia thing. So for me, it works on the nostalgia thing, seeing her use the Force, because to me, it reminds us the fact that she should be completely dead, but she is still barely alive. And the fact that she's a Skywalker, man. She's the daughter of the Chosen One. Luke is so powerful in the Force, he projects himself across the galaxy.
Yeah.
We had to see, even though Leia's not a trained Jedi, she has the Force just as powerful in her.
And she's been around it for years.
To do that, though, to be on the brink of death, and to pull yourself through debris and to land in the ship, and then go into a comatose state because you're pretty much dying, is so powerful that she's surpassed Jedi in the prequels that are all running around. She's that strong in the Force. Yeah. She's that Force sensitive. And I do believe, and I said this in the spoiler review, I think people wouldn't have had as big of a problem if she hadn't passed away. I do believe, I think people felt more, and I remember feeling that too. I was like, wow, it's like a send-off to Carrie Fisher, and that's not what it is.
They should change it to be. And
they shouldn't have changed the movie to it. They shouldn't have changed it because she passed away to write the character off. A lot of people were like, oh, Leia should have stayed on the ship instead of Holdo with the lightspeed thing. And sure, she could have, and I think it would have worked for the story. But if you read the books Leia, which I haven't read yet, but I've heard that Holdo's in there, and they're great friends.
Yeah.
And I think they all know Leia's needed more than Admiral Holdo is. Yeah. Leia is a symbol. I mean, Finn says it. People believe in Leia.
Yeah.
People believe in the Skywalkers because of what they did to take down the Empire the first time. This First Order's going down because of these Skywalkers. And I do think we're going to open up. I think she will die, and I think we will open up the movie at her funeral.
Yeah, and I think...
Years later. I think it'll be 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah, I think it'll be 2 or 3 years later. I think Kylo Ren will be with his Knights of Ren, and I think it'll start with a funeral, and I really, just the fanboy in me wants Luke and Anakin to show up at the funeral, and could you imagine they take Hayden Christensen and make him look older, take Mark Hamill, make him look younger, and have Hayden Christensen almost consoling Luke? Like, how crazy would that be?
I mean, I think they'll pop up in the background. If she does, if they don't recast the character, if they choose to give her a peaceful death, I don't think it's going to be like Leia Organa has died it might say that in the text crawl, but that won't be the only mention. It will open with her funeral and Finn and Rey and everyone standing around an epic funeral. And I think that's a beautiful way to send her off. But to be honest, I think this movie coming out the way it was is the most beautiful way to send off her character.
Yeah, and then I think if they had a funeral and to see Finn, Poe, and Rey,
especially Poe to me.
Yeah, especially
because
their
relationship is so great,
and he'll be the
he's
leader.
Being like you can tell in the movie they're teaching him to be a leader.
Yeah, well, that was his whole arc.
I mean, the whole thing, like, you know, there were heroes on that ship, but there were no leaders.
And I think the two high ups in the rebellion are going to be Poe and Finn. I think Finn also went through his arc where he's going to be high up.
This isn't a race thing. I think Finn's going to be the Lando and Poe the Han, but they're going to then take the main roles as leaders without Leia being there. And I think Rey is now our Skywalker, Kylo's our Vader.
Yeah.
And the Porgs are just cuddly. And that's it.
And the Porgs are the Ewoks.
And the Porgs are amazing. Love me some Porgs. Kyle hated the Porgs. Loved me the Porgs.
Yeah, I didn't mind the Porgs.
In the humor, the Porgs never really truly bothered me because I thought they were used very subtly. Especially the second time. I had another point to talk about. Completely forgot about it. We had a whole list of points to make sure we get to I wanted to add one halfway through. Totally forgot it. But I'll bring this up since I just did think of it. Let's talk about Broom Boy for a second, because there's so much controversy around Broom Boy. Who's Broom Boy? Broom Boy's the next movie. Broom Boy, Broom Boy. Guys, the whole movie ends with Luke becoming a symbol and a legend for years to come. The kids are telling the story. That is probably months later, a year later with those kids.
Could be.
As slaves. And they're telling the story. Oh, did you hear Luke Skywalker? All these lasers hit, and he won and defeated them, and he became a legend. And when a little boy who knows he has the Force, it's a mirror shot. It's just at night in space instead of at the dawn of Luke looking off. And when he turns the broom into the lightsaber, it's not saying. And maybe he might be a specific character.
I don't think so.
He might. Maybe,
I think he's a symbol because that's.
I think he's a symbol too. If he is a character, that's fine. Let's see the movie. But I think it's saying it mirrors what Luke said to Kylo, and I love the cutting. When Luke is like, hope will never die, and it goes to like Finn, and then it goes to Poe, and it's like, people will always rise up, and then when he says, I am not the last Jedi, and it goes right to Rey, the rocks are up, it's saying that no matter what, the Force will balance itself out, and that balance is pretty much impossible to achieve.
Yeah.
And I think it's brilliant. I think the movie, I raised my rating, guys, from a 9 to a 9.5, seeing it the second time. Probably, I mean, in a Star Wars, I love Star Wars. I'll put them all together in a 10, but except maybe the prequels. But I really, really enjoy the movie. It's in my top 3 Star Wars movies ever. I really want to see it again. I know there's some scenes, Canto Bite, the Maz Kanata scene. I get rid of them. They're fine scenes. They don't belong in this movie.
Yeah, I give the movie an 8.8 just because of the Canto Bite stuff, and I think everything.
Here at Movie Meals, we don't do 0.8s.
Well, I do.
Well, no.
But I think that's the only thing that holds this movie back from being on the level of an Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I mean, Empire's got some weird moments, too.
Yeah, but Empire, I think, is one of the best movies of all time, let alone Star Wars movies.
Sure. But guys, we've talked for a long time, 45-something minutes here, and we just wanted to talk about some of these theories. As big Star Wars fans, we've home for Christmas, been talking about it for the last, 3 days, and these are our thoughts, and a lot of this stuff really pretty much worked for us. We had a couple of things, some jokes didn't hit for me, but that's just my own personality. Those jokes didn't hit, The milk scene to me was kind of weird. Other people laughed. But I don't, outside of the Canto Bite scene, there's nothing I really, really like. And even that I don't actively hate. There's nothing in the movie I actively hate. There are parts I don't like, I wish wouldn't have been in there. Maybe the Canto Bite could have been a short or a deleted scene. Yeah. But there were re-rays to work it, but I wish it would have gotten more Phasma, but even rewatching it the second time, the Phasma battle was more impactful to me the second time. And it reminiscent of Vader having his mask in Rebels, it gets attacked in a fight. And also, I want to point this out just real quick, side tangent, because I meant to tell you earlier, I love that Rey fights like Ahsoka. Yeah. Ahsoka was kind of the first character where she's fighting, Levi Attack on Titan style. She's holding the blade differently, which is, which funny, a lot of people say is the way you should hold a sword.
Kylo Ren also, I think, saw her do that because in his fight scene, he uses that a little bit.
He noticed it, but she's really focused on it. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, I love that she's doing this.
Oh, it's so cool.
Who knows? Maybe she's Ahsoka's daughter. I mean, Ahsoka's an alien, but you never know who she hooked up with. I'm just saying. I mean, she wasn't a Jedi when she left the Order. Wasn't a Jedi, so she can go hook up with anybody she wants. Yeah, and also, technically, now we don't need to get in that Force argument. But, guys, these are just some of our thoughts and theories. If you liked this episode, give us some comments about it. I know it's long, but give us some comments if you want some more. I'm going to be doing more Welcome to the Cantina podcast, but that's tougher to do because Star Wars is just now in everybody's consciousness, and I'm not so nerdy, and I know the views right now is the way our channel isn't going to get 100 views just because I read the book or something. So this is more of a special thing, but if you like it, if you want Nick back and more to talk more Star Wars on his points, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for listening. If you agree or disagree with anything, put them in the comments. It's all spoiler heavy, so go ahead and do that, guys, and we'll see. We got some more reviews coming as the end of the year's coming up. We got our top 10 of 2017 will be coming soon. We got a few more movies to see because they come to us later, but thanks for sticking with us, guys, and as always, Mom, thanks for listening.
Yeah.